We're looking at the finest architecture across the country, and we've asked our judging panel of industry leaders at Woods Bagot Architecture to put their heads together and find the best of the best in our countdown of the top 10. Now, Green Square Library, just behind me, has already made it through to the final. Now, it's time to find two more. Welcome to Australia by Design Architecture. Coming up in this episode, we are sailing by Pittwater. Susie is playing with colour in Mandurah. Jill's bringing us a project in Bondi that you might not expect to see on this show. And Peter's bringing us a bold sculptural take on a traditional form.
Punchbowl Mosque is quite simply an outstanding modern interpretation of traditional religious architecture.
Well, Angelo Candelapis is a very accomplished architect when it comes to concrete. I think this is one of the finest examples of his work that we've seen.
Sitting in a very typical suburb of Sydney, it's a very striking and untypical building. Punchbowl Mosque is a first for Australia. Adrian, it's a striking piece of architecture. How did Angelo get the commission?
Well, the Australian Islamic Mission, our clients, are a charitable religious non-profit organisation who've been based in the neighbourhood since the early 70s. They moved to this site in the 90s and engaged in the process of consolidation of a number of properties to form what is ultimately this site for the mosque.
It's an unusual building. It's striking in its context, and it's also striking for a religious building in that it doesn't really look like a church.
Angelo comes from a non-Muslim faith, and part of the reason why we were engaged to develop this site was the client's desire to be more open and welcoming towards the broader community.
Obviously, there's a longevity to the concrete as well. It looks like a building that's going to be here for a long time.
Correct. Well, part of the client's brief was to design a building that would last for 100 years. Angelo's intent was being a spiritual religious building that would be here for 1,000 years. Perhaps the best way to experience the building would be as the worshippers would. If you come this way. So, Peter, this is the male ablution space where worshippers first come into to cleanse themselves prior to moving through into the mosque.
It's beautiful. It's got this lovely, soft, curved ceiling that just draws the light in.
So the intent of this space is to prepare you mentally for moving through into the main prayer space. It's part of that washing ritual that spiritually you're ready to move through. So it's about closing out the external world. We have concealed, filtered light from the top. We start to introduce blackbush as a material to warm up the space.
And I love the way these cleaning seats are very much based on a traditional pattern of seating in any mosque that you would find in the Arab world. And once the worshipper has bathed, they're then permitted to enter the main space.
Yes, so they pass through this compressed area through into the main prayer space.
Wow, it's really low, isn't it?
Yes.
Like you really feel like the building is sucking you in.
Absolutely. So we've intentionally created this quite compressed space, again, to settle you as you move through into the larger mosque space.
Wow.
The raking concrete ceiling comprises of approximately 102 quarter-sphere domes, all cast or formed in concrete, and it references back to traditional motifs in Islamic architecture, which we've obviously taken through into quite a contemporary interpretation. So all of these elements were poured in place, so it's all formed concrete, and within the centre of each one of these quarter spheres, we've cast a 30mm diameter pipe, which draws natural light in from the outside. And again, that's referencing the Arab tradition of navigation by stars, and it also references how the sun moves around the space during the day, because obviously we worship at different times of the day. The male worshippers come through to this space down here, and then the female worshippers are drawn into the heart of the mosque, up above on level 1 with this timber screen forming that separation between the male and female.
It's such a big building, but there's no heating or cooling. It's all done by natural ventilation and by the use of basically people moving through the space.
Absolutely. So we draw all the warm air from this space where it's being generated, and it gets sucked up out through the minaret, through those gills, and also through the dome, which has fixed trickle vents to allow the heat to escape.
So Adrian, for what appears to be a relatively simple building, there are actually moments of craftsmanship.
Absolutely. So where we have had the opportunity, such as in this sacred space, we've added that extra level of refinement and detail through this stone, for example, which is obviously a wonderful black granite with this gold and white veining running through it, which adds that robustness and obviously that quality to this sacred space.
And the concrete domes themselves, I mean, they're very unusual. Can you explain how did you actually build that?
In order to cast the forms, we created individual fiberglass molds for each of the 102 sculpted forms, and then it was all poured on site by the builder. And it really is a testament to the builder that they managed to pull off such a complex task with such an incredible outcome.
I've never seen a ceiling like it.
It is a very unique design, and it's been crafted and built to an incredibly high degree. So from our point of view, it's an amazing outcome.
And possibly the only one in the world.
I would expect so, yeah.
Well, welcome back to the beautiful sunken garden here at Green Square, where the acoustics are just as amazing as the architecture. We have been crossing the continent looking for some of the best architecture in Australia. But now it's my turn to take you for a dip into Pittwater.
The design of the Avalon residence is complex, but it's designed to capture the spectacular views in one of Sydney's most beautiful settings.
We're in Pittwater, one of the most beautiful parts of Sydney, if not Australia. And I'm about to meet the architect who's created an extraordinary house that's had to work very hard to keep up with this incredible location. Mark, why are we coming down the driveway?
Jamie, I wanted to bring you into the house in the same way the owners will arrive in the house, because that's the important issue in this house. And on this site, with a difficult site and the steepness, to come down to this driveway and not make it an ugly thing, but make it part of the architecture was a really important part of the design.
I love the way you've dropped this house so you can't even see it from the street.
The important part was to be private and secluded, and this sense of this thing is just lost in the bush.
I mean, this is just an incredible view, isn't it?
Jamie, this is Pittwater. This is what this house is all about. If you want to travel up a hill in Pittwater, you go to a bay, you climb up the watercourse, and each rock gives you another aspect as you climb up the hill. Yep. This house is built exactly that way. Each level gives you a different perspective of Pittwater.
Yet we're kind of floating 100 feet up above the water level, aren't we? Is that what the wing's for?
Yes, the wing is part of the graphic of the building. The building is about movement, and Pittwater is about movement, about boats, Halversons, flying boats, and the wing is an important part of that. But interestingly, I did a sketch of a wing over the front door in the original concept. And 2 weeks later, the client rings me excitedly and said, "I've found a DC-3 for sale." So we flew out to Western New South Wales and ended up buying this wing that was lying in a paddock. We've had it restored, re-riveted by an old aircraft fitter. It's a great arrival, and it's a great sense of drama at the beginning of the house.
And, you know, when you arrive, you don't really know that we're sitting on 5 levels.
Yeah, the house goes through 5 levels, and this stair cascades down these levels through the rock to get you through the levels of the house. Yeah. But we do have a lift.
Of course. Well, she looks amazing.
So we've just entered the main living area, Jamie, and at this level, we really wanted to feel like you're on a boat moving down Pittwater.
Yeah, you can definitely see all the nautical references here. It's just stunning.
The curves and the flow, it may help you move through the space and also give you a sense of floating across the water.
It's not just about nautical, is it? It's about aeronautical.
It's about aeronautical and the sense of movement in air. The kitchen bench is a Spitfire wing. In the stairwell, the rake wall is a reference to the great Zeppelins of the 1930s, the viewing platform which allows you to look to the courtyard. The windows and the view this way is like looking off an ocean liner.
Yeah. That is the biggest operable window I think I've ever seen. What is it, 10 foot by 10 foot? It's unbelievable.
It's 3 metres square, Jamie.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And there's 3 of them along here which allow us to open up this entire space.
Yeah.
So this lounge room is actually outside on a deck.
You do really get that seamless transition to the reason you would build a house here, right? This gorgeous water view. And I'd imagine, you know, with all of the curves here, for the tradesmen, this must have been extremely difficult.
Jamie, there's not a parallel line in this house.
Yeah.
So the set out, the curves and the shape from the get-go caused issues with the building, but we had a fabulous group of tradesmen here that worked with those curves and celebrated them. You can see them in the space now, how well that's all come together.
You didn't make it easy for them, did you?
I didn't make it easy, but they enjoyed it and they enjoyed the challenge and they rose to it here. The stonemason was here for nearly 3 years.
I mean, you've made a few waves, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I like the flow and the curve, and I like a building that isn't static.
Yes.
There's a nice sense of excitement and movement through this building, which I think is really important.
Yes.
It's a big building. The way we've broken it down and the way it moves and flows, it has a sense of place, which I'm really proud of.
I mean, it could have been easy for you to just stick a glass box on the side of the hill and say, hey, this is it, right?
Absolutely, and that would have been a natural response to a view like this, was just to maximise it across every level. But instead, I think it's much more critical to curate the views in such a way that you treat Pittwater and you make people look at it in different aspects and views. And I think that's worked extremely well here.
Well, I think we can all agree that this truly was an ambitious project that's been carefully considered from top to bottom to ensure that it fitted perfectly into this incredible site. It's now become a landmark project for the area. Architects play a huge role in our life when creating public buildings like this, and many of them that we take for granted take as much thought, care and consideration as any multi-million-dollar home. Right now, Jill's in Bondi, about to show us another public building.
North Bondi amenity demonstrates architecture at play in the community.
Constructed of concrete and recycled timber battens with an excellent green roof, which I really love.
Putting it in a central spot in Bondi also is good for the public that use it around the general population, but it's also safe, and safety is a major thing.
This project is one of the most visited sites in Australia, but it's not what you might expect. So Sam, tell me why we're here talking about a toilet block.
Yeah, I guess Bondi is Australia's most visited tourist destination. I believe 2.5 million people visit every year. And so this little building serves a lot of people.
I really like what you've done with the roof. Is it about the sand blowing up from the beach, about sort of capturing a little bit of the dune idea?
I suppose it's the dune, but it's also the headlands. So the idea of the rocky headlands and the way that little plants end up growing in the cracks and crevices of the headlands. And it's as though the roof is just self-seeded with the sand blowing onto it.
Yeah, it feels like that. It's quite lovely. It obviously has to be an extremely robust building to cope with this weather and this wind. What's it all made from?
The external skin of the building is wrapped in timber. We were having a meeting with council one day at one of their depots, and part of the building was being demolished, and there was all these beautiful timbers that were potentially going to the tip, and we were able to secure those timbers and recycle them for this building. Privacy is obviously critical in a building like this. It's a public change room and toilets. What you might often have is a kind of a gap between the walls and the roof to allow ventilation. So the concrete block wall that sits behind the timber skin has little slots in it that allow ventilation through.
What I noticed was that they're also very carefully oriented so you get ventilation, a lot of ventilation, but absolutely no visibility. I really like the way that you've put the basins on the outside of the building.
Yeah.
Is there a reason behind it?
Bondi is very much a place where life is lived in public. You've got Muswell Beach just down here, people coming up from the beach, having a shower in public. People love to be on show.
Yeah.
And so putting the mirrors in addition to the basins means that there's a bit of preening goes on, and means that there's more people just around the building, which increases public safety. It also means that if you just need to wash your hands because you've had an ice cream, you can come and wash your hands.
You don't have to go in. I'm always delighted when I see local government invest in design in their even tiny infrastructure.
The beach sees millions of visitors each year, as opposed to, say, in the 1930s, where the population increase is just astronomical.
I can imagine.
So we're having to cater for that increase.
What sort of feedback have you had from the public?
It's been great. We get loads and loads of tourist buses that pull up to this location and use the facilities. Lots of beachgoers, surfers come through using the showers. So the
I've noticed they all like being on display.
It's Bondi Beach. Everyone likes to be on display, so yeah.
Hopefully you can see why we're featuring a toilet block on this show. It would be very easy to think that a building like this doesn't require investment in design. But the design of this building shows how important it is. It's delightful, it's robust, and it's safe. And it is visited by an extraordinary number of people every day.
We are just one colourful story away from finding the next 2 projects to go through to our grand final episode. But first, Susie is in Mandurah.
The Cloud House is a very skillful response to the needs of having multi-generations living alongside each other in a single dwelling.
It was by an Italian family, so as you can see, it captures the whole family vibe that Italians have.
The Cloud House utilises an interesting colour palette, one that reflects the vibrant sunsets that are seen in that part of Western Australia.
Located an hour south of Perth, Mandurah is a tourist mecca for generations of West Australians. The design brief for this architect was to design a beach house for 4 generations of one family to holiday together harmoniously. Hi Neil.
Susie, come on up.
Oh Neil, you're up there now. Are you down there? You playing hard to get?
Never. Come this way. My clients are accommodating them, not only themselves, but their 2 adult daughters who are married, their grandchildren, and my client's own parents. So it's 4 generations of family in the one house. Could be a nightmare for some. This family are embracing that. And we have an apartment-style typology where it's multi-level. There's 3 levels of building, and people can holiday together as a family, or if they're coming just as a couple, there's components of the building that shut down and you feel comfortable in a smaller area within the house.
So that's like at the top floor. Is that for the older generation?
Yes, my clients themselves have the top floor.
So
they
the
have,
second generation?
with their master bedroom, they have their own study area and sitting area and a kitchenette. So if it's just the 2 of them, they can enjoy just that portion of the building. But when the whole family's here, they're connected to the main level, which we're on now, and they can be doing their own work at the top level and communicate with the rest of the family at this level now with their grandchildren.
So what I love about this house, Neil, is you've got this beautiful use of colour and it's quite whimsical.
The use of colour has been deliberate to reinforce the fun of the holiday spirit, referencing the nautical location as we're between ocean, marina and the Peel Inlet. So we've got the nautical navigation colours of red, blue and green, 3 primary colours on the outside and through the house.
Neil, you've got some stunning curves in this building and even as we look up the void, you can see the details.
The house is called Cloud House. As you can see here, the bulkhead and the void connecting the floors is sort of cloud-like, and the ceilings on the first floor and through the master bedroom all roll like the underside of a cloud. Have a look at this.
Is that a cubby?
Sure is, have a look.
I love the cubby.
Well, it's all about family holiday houses and a bit of fun. So the grandchildren, this is their bedroom down this end, and they have their own cubby.
Oh, wow. This is a fantastic view, Neil.
So this is now the parents' part of the building, my actual clients for the project. Now they can shut down the rest of the building, come here as a couple and enjoy this, their own kitchenette here, their place of work when they want to, and their own sitting room and bedroom, and when the whole family's here, grandchildren at the other end.
And then you've got this amazing view. What an amazing view, Neil. Fantastic.
It's all about the view, and it's all about the interior and the exterior being seamlessly connected, as we've just experienced. The outside can be veiled with these blinds, which is very important in this extremely public location. Externally, we've expressed the concrete structure and just allowed that to weather naturally. We've got timber, which will allow it to grey to match the concrete over time. And then we have compressed sheet cladding, which again has no finish and it won't age. So maintenance in this very salt-ridden environment has been a primary concern in the design.
A very important feature for a holiday house. You don't want to be coming down every weekend and having to do maintenance.
Well, absolutely, and the intention is as maintenance-free as possible.
Reflecting the beautiful colours of our sunsets over the Indian Ocean and dramatic cloud formations, the architecture of Cloud House is both playful and whimsical, the perfect backdrop for this family to create memories, have loads of fun together. A true family legacy.
Let's hear the judges' decision on which of our projects are going through to the top 10 best of the best.
Punchbowl Mosque has deservedly made our final episode because it represents architectural detailing at the highest standard.
It really is a validation of the quality of the architecture in this project.
I'm not surprised that North Bondi Amenities got through to the final. The way it has been designed to be long-lasting, easily accessible, the safety, the outside facade, I think it's an amazing coming together of the architecture in a public space.
It's fantastic to see these public spaces really holding their own up against perhaps some of the more glamorous domestic homes. And with 8 projects now through to the final, that means there's only 2 spots left for our top 10.